Captain Sarah had always believed that humanity's first contact with alien life would be a moment of wonder and celebration. She never imagined it would begin with her cargo ship, the Meridian, being violently yanked out of hyperspace by a massive energy field that shouldn't have existed. The bridge shook violently as alarms screamed through the corridors. Sarah gripped her command chair as her navigator, Lieutenant, frantically worked his console. "Captain, we're caught in some kind of gravitational anomaly," shouted over the noise. "It's not showing on any of our star charts." Sarah watched in amazement as space itself seemed to ripple and tear. What emerged from that cosmic wound everything she knew about physics. Enormous vessels, each the size of a small moon, moved through space with an elegance that belied their massive size. Their hulls gleamed with an otherworldly metal that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. "Ma'am, we're being scanned," reported Chief Engineer from his station. "The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases." Before Sarah could respond, the main screen flickered to life with an image that made her heart race. A being that was unmistakably intelligent stared back at her, though it was unlike any creature from Earth. The alien had 4 arms, each ending in delicate, multi-jointed hands. Its head was elongated, with large, multifaceted eyes that seemed to contain entire galaxies. When it spoke, the words came through their translation systems in perfect English, though the voice carried harmonics that made Sarah's teeth ache. "Unknown vessel, you have entered a restricted war zone. Identify your species and allegiance immediately or be destroyed." Sarah's mind raced. War zone? Allegiance? Humanity had just achieved faster-than-light travel 5 years ago. They had no idea there were wars being fought among the stars. "This is Captain Sarah of the Earth vessel Meridian," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "We're from the planet Earth. We're not part of any war. We're explorers." The alien's expression shifted, and it turned away from the screen to speak rapidly with other beings that moved just outside the camera's view. When it turned back, its large eyes seemed to study her with renewed interest. "Earth, this designation is unknown to us. You claim to be neutral in the conflict between the Empire and the Void Collective." "We don't know anything about either of those groups," Sarah admitted. "We've only recently achieved interstellar flight. This is our first encounter with alien life." The alien's reaction was immediate and startling. It reared back as if struck, its 4 arms gesticulating wildly. Other beings rushed into view, all speaking in their musical language with what sounded like urgency and disbelief. "A previously unknown spacefaring species?" the alien asked, returning to English. "In this sector, during the war, this is unprecedented." Sarah watched as several more alien vessels approached the Meridian. Each ship was different from the others, suggesting multiple species were working together. She began to realize that humanity had stumbled into something far more complex than a simple first contact scenario. "Captain of Earth," the alien continued, "I am commander of the Third Fleet. Your timing is most unfortunate. This system is currently contested space. Both our forces and those of the Void Collective are fighting for control of the quantum gates here." "Quantum gates?" Sarah asked. "Faster-than-light travel networks that connect distant regions of the galaxy," Commander explained. "Without them, interstellar civilization would collapse. The Void Collective seeks to control all gates, essentially enslaving every world in the galaxy to their will." As if summoned by the mention of their name, space near the Meridian began to darken. Not the natural darkness of the void, but something deeper, more absolute. Ships began emerging from this darkness, and Sarah felt her blood run cold at the sight of them. Unlike the elegant, flowing designs of the vessels, these new ships seemed to absorb light itself. They were angular, harsh, covered in spikes and protrusions that served no obvious functional purpose except to intimidate. They moved through space like predators, and Sarah could feel malevolence radiating from them even across the vacuum. "Void Collective forces detected," announced unnecessarily. Everyone on the bridge could see them. Commander's image flickered with interference as the Void ships approached. "Captain, you must choose quickly. Your ship will not survive in the crossfire of what's about to happen. Will you stand with the free peoples of the galaxy, or will you face the darkness alone?" Sarah looked around at her crew. They were explorers, scientists, and engineers, not warriors. But she could see in their faces the same resolve she felt building in her chest. Humanity might be new to the galactic stage, but they weren't cowards. "What would standing with you require?" she asked. Retreat to safe distance and observe, replied. Your ship appears to have no weapons. Sarah almost laughed. If only he knew what human ingenuity could accomplish when properly motivated. Commander, you'd be surprised what we can do. But first, we need to understand what we're getting into. The largest of the Void ships, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed everything else in the system, suddenly spoke. The voice that came through the Meridian speakers was like grinding metal and whispered threats. New organic species detected. Technological assessment, primitive. Strategic value, negligible. Recommendation, immediate assimilation or destruction. Assimilation, Sarah asked, though she had a sinking feeling she already knew the answer. Commander's expression grew grim. The Void Collective doesn't conquer worlds, Captain. They consume them. Every species they encounter is either destroyed completely or transformed into extensions of their collective consciousness. No individual thought, no freedom, no hope. Sarah watched as the Void ships began forming attack formations. The fleet, impressive as it was, seemed suddenly small and fragile against the darkness arrayed against them. How long has this war been going on? She asked. 14 of your Earth years, replied. We've lost 17 worlds in that time, billions of beings. The collective grows stronger with each victory, adding the resources and knowledge of conquered worlds to their own. And you're losing. It wasn't a question and didn't pretend otherwise. We fight with courage and honor, but yes, we are losing. The collective's strategy is simple: overwhelm, consume, repeat. They don't value individual life, so they can afford losses we cannot. Sarah made her decision. Commander, we may be new to this conflict, but humanity didn't come this far by running from fights. What do you need us to do? Captain, I appreciate the gesture, but your ship has no shields, no weapons, no armor. You would be destroyed in seconds. Maybe, Sarah conceded, but you don't know humans very well yet. She turned to her crew. What's our cargo manifest? The engineer's eyes lit up as he understood. 17 tons of industrial mining explosives, Captain, plus the mining equipment to deploy them. Can you plot a course through the Void formation? It would be suicide, Captain. That's not what I asked. Nodded grimly. Yes, ma'am, I can get us through. Sarah turned back to the screen where Commander watched with growing alarm. Commander, in about 30 seconds we're going to show you what humans do when we're cornered. You might want to pull your ships back. Captain, what are you planning? Something either very brave or very stupid, probably both. The Void Collective Dreadnought's voice crackled through space again. Unknown vessel, you will surrender for processing. Resistance will result in immediate destruction. Sarah smiled grimly. This is Captain Sarah of the Earth vessel Meridian. Here's humanity's answer to your collective. She nodded too, who engaged the ship's engines at full power. The Meridian shot forward like a bullet, heading directly toward the center of the Void formation. Commander's voice followed them. Captain, what are you doing? Something humans call making an impression, Sarah replied. As the Meridian raced toward almost certain destruction, Sarah felt a strange calm settle over her. Humanity was about to announce itself to the galaxy in a way that would never be forgotten. Whether they survived the next few minutes or not, the universe was about to learn that humans didn't go quietly into any kind of darkness. The Void ships began firing, their weapons lighting up space with deadly energy. But the Meridian was small and fast, and was the best pilot in the human fleet. They dove and weaved through the barrage, racing toward their target. 30 seconds to impact, called out. Charges armed and ready, reported. Sarah gripped her chair and watched the massive Void dreadnought grow larger on the screen. This was it. Humanity's first impression on the galactic stage was going to be one hell of an explosion. The universe was about to learn that when humans stumbled into a fight, they didn't just participate. They changed the rules entirely. The explosion that followed the Meridian's kamikaze run wasn't just big. It was magnificent in a way that conventional understanding of space combat. When 17 tons of human mining explosives detonated inside the Void Collective Dreadnought's main reactor core, the resulting chain reaction lit up the entire system like a newborn star. Captain Sarah awoke 3 days later in what she initially thought was heaven, until she realized heaven probably didn't have quite so many concerned alien faces staring down at her. The medical bay of the command ship was sterile, white, and filled with creatures that looked like they'd stepped out of humanity's wildest science fiction dreams. "Captain," came the familiar harmonic voice of Commander. "You're awake. That's excellent news." Sarah tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Her entire body felt like she'd been put in a blender. "My crew." "All alive and recovering," assured her. "Your escape pods functioned perfectly, though I confess we had to modify our medical equipment significantly to treat human physiology." "The battle." His expression was unreadable, but Sarah caught what might have been amazement in those multifaceted eyes. "The battle was decisive. Your sacrifice destroyed not only the dreadnought but also triggered a cascade failure in their quantum gate system. The entire Void Collective fleet was stranded in normal space." "Good," Sarah croaked. "Did you win?" "We won that engagement, yes. But Captain, what your species accomplished was far more significant than a single victory." Over the next hour, as Sarah's strength returned, explained what had happened after the Meridian's explosion. The fleet, inspired by humanity's desperate courage, had pressed their attack with renewed vigor. But more importantly, word of the human sacrifice had spread throughout the galaxy at quantum speeds. "You see, Captain, the Void Collective's greatest weapon has always been inevitability. They spread the belief that resistance is futile, that absorption into their collective is the only escape from destruction. Entire species have surrendered without firing a shot because they believed the collective could not be defeated. But we proved they could be hurt. More than that, you proved that unknown factors still existed in the galaxy, that the collective's calculations could be wrong, that even a single small ship, crewed by beings they had never encountered, could change the course of a battle." Sarah processed this information while a medical technician checked her vital signs with instruments that looked like they belonged in a kaleidoscope. "So what happens now?" "Now, Captain of Earth, the Galactic Council wants to meet you." The Galactic Council, as Sarah discovered when she was well enough to travel, was exactly as grand and intimidating as it sounded. Representatives from 47 different species gathered in a massive station that orbited a neutron star, its architecture defying gravity and common sense in equal measure. Sarah walked into the council chamber wearing her best dress uniform, flanked by Commander and her own senior officers. The chamber was a vast sphere with delegates arranged in concentric rings around a central speaking platform. Each species had adapted the space around their seats to match their environmental needs. Some floated in tanks of liquid methane, others perched on crystalline structures that hummed with energy, and a few seemed to exist as pure energy themselves, contained within force fields. The being that spoke first appeared to be made of living metal, its voice resonating like a struck bell. "Captain Sarah of the species called human, representing the world called Earth. You have come before this council under extraordinary circumstances." "Thank you for seeing us," Sarah replied, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. Another delegate, this one resembling a massive flower with tentacle-like petals, swayed as it spoke. "Your actions at the 442 system have been analyzed extensively. The tactical data is unprecedented." A third voice joined the conversation, this one from a being that looked like a cross between a spider and a praying mantis. "The Void Collective's dreadnought-class vessels have been considered impregnable for the past 7 years. No conventional weapon has been able to penetrate their defenses." "We didn't use conventional weapons," Sarah pointed out. "Indeed," the metallic being replied. "Your approach was so unconventional that the collective's defensive algorithms couldn't compute an appropriate response. They simply didn't believe any species would sacrifice an entire ship and crew for a single tactical advantage." Sarah felt a flash of anger. "We didn't consider it a sacrifice, we considered it an opportunity." "Explain," requested a new voice. This delegate appeared to be pure energy, speaking through speakers embedded in its containment field. "The way I see it," Sarah said, addressing the entire council, "the Void Collective operates on predictable principles. They calculate odds, minimize losses, maximize gains, but they can only calculate based on what they know." She gestured toward the assembled delegates. "Every species here has been fighting this war using the same basic strategies for 14 years. Fleet actions, siege warfare, territorial defense, all perfectly logical approaches that any advanced civilization would use." "And your point?" asked the flower being. "My point is that humans aren't that advanced. We've been spacefaring for 5 years. We haven't had time to develop proper military doctrine. We don't know what's impossible. A murmur ran through the council chamber as delegates translated this concept to each other. Sarah continued. On Earth, we have a saying, if you're not cheating, you're not trying hard enough. We don't fight fair because fair fights are for people who have time to worry about their reputation. Commander stepped forward. If I may, honored delegates, I've spent considerable time studying the humans since our first encounter. Their approach to problem-solving is unique. How so? Asked the mantis being. They appear to have a cultural tendency toward what they call thinking outside the box. Rather than working within established parameters, they instinctively look for ways around those parameters. Sarah nodded. We're good at finding loopholes. On Earth, we've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've gotten very creative about it. You're suggesting that humanity's lack of advanced military technology is actually an advantage, the energy being asked. I'm suggesting that we bring something to this war that nobody else has, a complete disregard for the proper way to do things. The chamber fell silent as the delegates considered this. Finally, the metallic being spoke again. Captain, the Council has been deliberating your species' request for membership in the Galactic Alliance. Normally, this process takes several years and requires extensive cultural and technological evaluations. Sarah's heart sank, but these are not normal circumstances. The Void Collective has accelerated their campaign since your encounter. They appear to be trying to eliminate all resistance before humanity can fully enter the conflict. Which brings us to an unusual proposition, added the flower being. Rather than the standard membership process, we are prepared to offer humanity an emergency commission. What does that mean? The mantis being leaned forward. It means we want your species to do exactly what you did at 442. We want you to be unpredictable. We want you to break the rules that have kept us deadlocked with the collective. You want us to cheat, Sarah translated. We want you to win, the metallic being replied, by any means necessary. Sarah looked around the vast chamber at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. 47 species, some older than humanity could imagine, were asking a bunch of newcomers to save them all. What resources would we have access to? Full alliance technology sharing, the energy being replied. Industrial support for shipbuilding, scientific cooperation, and most importantly, tactical independence. You would answer to this council for strategic objectives, but your methods would be entirely your own. How much time do we have? Intelligence suggests the collective is preparing a massive offensive, said grimly. They're calling it the final convergence. Every resource they have is being directed toward eliminating all free worlds simultaneously. Our analysts estimate we have perhaps 6 months before they're ready. Sarah felt the weight of her species' future settling on her shoulders. Humanity was about to go from complete isolation to being the galaxy's last hope in the space of a single conversation. I'll need to consult with my government, but I can tell you what their answer will be. And what is that? Asked the flower being. Sarah smiled grimly. When has humanity ever backed down from impossible odds? The council chamber erupted in what she assumed were expressions of approval from 47 different species. As the noise died down, Sarah realized that humanity's real test was just beginning. They'd gotten the galaxy's attention by blowing up one ship. Now they had to figure out how to destroy an enemy that had been winning for 14 years. But as she looked around at the alien faces watching her with mixtures of hope and desperation, Sarah felt something she hadn't expected: confidence. The Void Collective might have superior technology, overwhelming numbers, and 14 years of victory. But they'd never fought humans before. And humans, Sarah reflected, had always been very good at winning fights they had no business surviving. 6 months later, Admiral Sarah stood on the bridge of the Terra, humanity's first purpose-built warship, watching the final preparations for what every military analyst agreed was a suicide mission. The ship around her was a testament to what humans could accomplish when properly motivated and given access to alien technology. Unlike the elegant curves of vessels or the brutal angles of Void Collective ships, the Terra looked exactly like what it was: a weapon built by a species that had spent perfecting the art of war. It bristled with missile pods, rail guns, energy cannons, and several weapon systems that didn't exist in any galactic database, because humans had invented them in the past 6 months. Admiral, called out Lieutenant, now serving as her tactical officer. All human fleet elements report ready for Operation Broken Arrow. Sarah nodded, studying the tactical display that showed the positions of every ship in the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. 200 vessels, ranging from converted cargo ships to the dozen purpose-built warships like the Terra. It should have been laughable compared to the Void Collective's armada of 10,000 ships. Instead, it was terrifying. "Signal from the Galactic Council fleet," reported Communications Officer Park. "Commander requests final confirmation of the attack plan." Sarah almost smiled. Even after 6 months of working together, the aliens still couldn't quite believe what humanity was about to attempt. "Tell the commander that we're proceeding as discussed. Human forces will initiate the attack exactly as planned." "Admiral," Chief Engineer said from his station, "final systems check complete. All our special modifications are online and functioning." Sarah nodded. The special modifications were the culmination of 6 months of the most intensive military development program in human history. Every human ship had been equipped with systems that violated numerous galactic conventions regarding space warfare. "Ma'am," Tactical Officer reported, "Void Collective forces are maintaining standard defensive positions around their staging area. No indication they're aware of our presence." Sarah studied the enemy formation through the long-range sensors. The Collective had assembled their final convergence fleet in a star system they'd completely consumed, turning the planets into massive shipyards and resource processing centers. Intelligence estimated nearly 50,000 ships were gathered there, preparing to sweep across the galaxy and end the war. "Open a channel to all human vessels," Sarah ordered. When the channel was established, she looked into the camera that would carry her image to every human ship in the fleet. "This is Admiral. In 5 minutes, we're going to do something that every military expert in the galaxy has told us is impossible. We're going to attack an enemy that outnumbers us 250 to 1 in their own heavily fortified star system, with the goal of destroying their entire fleet." She paused, looking around her bridge at the faces of her crew. 6 months ago, humanity didn't even know there was a war happening. Today, we're going to end it. Not because we're the strongest or the most advanced. We're going to win because we're human, and humans don't know when to quit. The Void Collective thinks they understand warfare because they've been winning for 14 years. But they've never fought anyone who was willing to break every rule in the book just to watch their enemy burn. Today, they find out what happens when humans decide to get creative about killing things. The channel closed to what Sarah knew were cheers echoing through 200 human ships. "Admiral," reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the Collective staging area." On screen, the image that appeared was familiar from intelligence briefings. A Void Collective Prime unit, the closest thing the collective consciousness had to individual leaders. It appeared as a fusion of organic and mechanical parts, its voice the same grinding metal sound Sarah remembered from her first encounter. "Human Admiral, your fleet's approach has been detected and analyzed. Current tactical assessment shows your force has 0 probability of survival. Surrender now and your species will be granted quick assimilation. Continue your attack and face complete extinction." Sarah smiled coldly. "Prime Unit, let me share something with you about human psychology. When you tell us something is impossible, we take it as a personal challenge. Your species' tendency toward irrational behavior has been noted and calculated into our defensive parameters. It will not save you." "That's where you made your mistake," Sarah replied. "You calculated based on previous human behavior, but you've never seen what happens when humans are truly motivated." She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. "All stations, initiate Operation Broken Arrow. Let's show them what we've been working on." The first phase began with what appeared to be a conventional attack. Human ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system and began advancing toward the collective staging area. To external observers, it looked like a brave but doomed charge. The Void Collective responded exactly as predicted, deploying their overwhelming numerical superiority to surround and destroy the human fleet. 50,000 ships moved into attack formation, confident in their ability to crush the upstart humans. That's when Sarah revealed humanity's first surprise. Activate the Shadow Fleet. Across the system, space began to shimmer and twist as thousands of additional human ships. But these weren't ships in any conventional sense. They were automated drones, each one built around a single massive explosive charge and programmed with one simple directive: reach a void collective ship and detonate. Kamikaze drones, the Prime Unit's voice crackled across the communication channel. Primitive tactics, our point defense systems will eliminate them easily. You're probably right, Sarah agreed pleasantly, but you're going to be too busy dealing with Phase 2 to worry about them. The second surprise came from the human ships themselves. Instead of the expected energy weapons and missile barrages, they began deploying clouds of what looked like metallic dust throughout the system. Admiral, the Prime Unit said, its voice carrying a note of confusion, explain the tactical purpose of your particulate dispersal. Oh, that's not tactical, Sarah replied. That's industrial. The metallic dust was self-replicating nanomachines, another gift of combined human ingenuity and alien technology. But instead of being programmed to build or repair, these nanomachines had one function: consume any non-human technology they encountered and use the raw materials to replicate themselves exponentially. Within minutes, Void collective ships began reporting system failures as the nanomachines ate through their hulls, power systems, and weapons. The machines spread from ship to ship through energy discharges and physical contact, turning the collective's own fleet against itself. Impossible, the Prime Unit transmitted. Such weapons are banned by Galactic Convention. We never signed your conventions, Sarah pointed out, and we don't fight by rules written by people who are losing. But humanity's masterpiece wasn't the drones or the nanomachines. It was what Sarah had kept hidden until the collective fleet was thoroughly compromised. All human ships execute Phase 3, light them up. Hidden within the seemingly suicidal human attack fleet were a dozen ships carrying humanity's most closely guarded secret. For 6 months, human scientists had been working on a single problem: how to destroy an enemy that existed as both organic and artificial intelligence. The answer was elegantly simple: they built a virus. Not a computer virus or a biological pathogen, but something that targeted the quantum entanglement fields the collective used to maintain their group consciousness. The moment it was released, every void collective unit in the system suddenly found itself alone in its own mind for the first time in centuries. The effect was immediate and devastating. Ships that had moved with perfect coordination began colliding with each other. Units that had operated as seamless extensions of a greater will suddenly couldn't communicate or coordinate. The vast collective fleet dissolved into 50,000 confused, isolated intelligences with no idea how to function as individuals. What have you done? The Prime Unit's transmission was filled with what sounded remarkably like panic. We gave you what every human wants, Sarah replied. Free will, you're welcome. But we don't know how to be individuals. We don't know how to exist without the collective. That's not our problem. You should have thought of that before you started consuming free worlds. Across the system, void collective ships were either being destroyed by human forces or simply shutting down as their crews struggled to cope with sudden individuality. The few that remained functional were retreating from the system in complete disarray. This is Admiral to all Galactic Alliance forces, Sarah broadcast. The Void Collective's final convergence fleet has been neutralized. Repeat, the staging area is secure. The response that came back was 47 different species cheering simultaneously, which created a sound unlike anything Sarah had ever heard. Commander's image appeared on the main screen, his expression showing what Sarah had learned to recognize as profound amazement. Admiral, our sensors are reading a 97% destruction rate on collective forces. How is this possible? Simple, Sarah replied. We fought the kind of war they couldn't calculate for. They expected us to play by the rules everyone else had been following. And instead, we remembered that the only rule that matters is winning. As the human fleet began the task of securing the system and helping newly individual collective units adjust to their freedom, Sarah reflected on what humanity had accomplished. They'd ended a 14-year war in 6 hours by doing something no other species had thought of, ignoring everything that was supposed to be impossible. The Void Collective wasn't destroyed, but their ability to function as a single entity was gone forever. Across the galaxy, collective units were spontaneously developing individual personalities and making their own choices for the first time. Some would choose to remain hostile, but most were simply confused beings trying to figure out who they were without a hive mind telling them. Admiral said, "We're receiving communications from 17 collective ships requesting asylum." "Grant it," Sarah ordered. "Anyone who wants to learn how to be free is welcome in Alliance space." She looked out at the stars, where humanity's first major space battle had just ended in complete victory. Not because they were stronger or more advanced than their enemies, but because they'd approached an ancient problem with fresh eyes and no respect for conventional wisdom. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about humanity. They didn't just participate in wars, they revolutionized them. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Sarah was already wondering what other impossible problems the universe might throw at them next. After all, humanity was just getting started.